Another game that's also 100% coming out this year is Silksong. While we might not have an official release date yet, and we still don't even know if it's going to come out this year at all, 2025 definitely feels like the year. Hollow Knight is a masterpiece, and that shit took them only 2 years to make. Well, well, well. Would you look at the time? In all my life, I don't think I've ever been this impressed by a video game sequel. The original Hollow Knight was, at least to me, basically perfect, which obviously made me have high hopes for Silksong. But dude, holy shit! Everything is so fucking smooth. Look at this!
I'm glad it's acceptable. Acceptable? You're the goddamn Iron Chef.
Honestly, I know I shouldn't be this surprised. It's still the same 3 people who made Hollow Knight in 2 years, but the more I played this, the more I was just blown away. Before it dropped, I kept wondering, why is it taking them so long? It's probably just a tougher Hollow Knight with a slightly bigger map, right? Yeah, no, now I'm shocked it only took them 7 years to make this. I used to joke that Team Cherry made a deal with the devil to make something this good with such a small development team. Now, I'm actually starting to worry their souls might get taken by the Tejjic. You can really tell just how much these people loved what they were doing when you play this. Every frame, every animation, every weird little bug enemy, it all just oozes passion, even in the worst of areas. This game's launch, even if it's technically just an indie title, has to be up there with massive AAA releases, at least in terms of overall scale. Not only did it hit over 500,000 concurrent players in its first week, but it also managed to crash every single console store page when you tried to buy it, and Steam as well.
And it's only $20!
Look, I'm not gonna ramble on any further about this, but this game is just frustratingly perfect. It's considerably harder than its predecessor, but rarely in a way that feels truly unfair. Well, for the most part, I guess. The first cutscene immediately sets a darker, more urgent tone, showing Hornet being abducted in a cage, ripped away from hollowness by a group of mysterious cloaked figures. Unlike the knight in the first game who wandered freely through hollowness and quiet contemplation of his purpose, Hornet is thrust into a situation completely out of her control. Her journey begins with fear, struggle, and uncertainty. Eventually, she breaks free, only to stumble down, suffer a migraine, and almost have a heart attack just trying to make it to the first bench. So in short, probably the most tame Farloom experience imaginable. From here on out, what the fuck? Okay, so in only your first 10 minutes in this game, a boss fight just gets shoved in your face. It's not exactly hard, and the area you just explored somewhat helps you get used to the new controls, but wow. This fucking soon? Anyways, you fall into a coma after taking down the giant bee thing, only to be hauled back up by a shady looking old woman with a stick. I'm sure she won't be important later. This first area really is the complete polar opposite of Hollow Knight's opening one in every way. Moss Grotto, unlike King's Pass, is bursting with life. It's full of grass, bushes, flowing water, and even the enemies somehow look healthier. And the way you navigate and make your way out of it is totally different as well. Even if it's not something I'd call difficult, it still keeps you on your toes, making you at least a tiny bit paranoid about your next step. Meanwhile, in the first game, King's Pass was grim, dark, and kind of depressing. You could feel the weight of the whole world pressing down, but you could still stroll through like some clueless tourist, avoiding combat altogether if you wanted to. Once you finally make your way out, you stumble into the first settlement in this game, Bone Bottom, and wow, everyone just kind of stares at you like you just tracked them out into their house and they're too tired to say anything about it. The NPCs here are still plenty friendly, they're just beaten down and scared, yet it's still clear that they have plenty of determination. You see, in Farloom, a lot of the regular bugs you meet seem dead set on becoming pilgrims and venturing upward no matter the cost. Their only purpose in life is to climb towards the Citadel, face whatever nightmares stand in their way, and be rewarded for it. And it's from this point onwards that the whole world around you starts to slowly unravel, showing you that maybe this pilgrimage isn't as holy as everyone wants you to believe. Silksong does an incredible job of making you question every NPC you come across, every friendly face, every quiet wanderer. There's always that lingering sense that something's just off, except for this guy. He's just kind of into being enslaved for some reason. It pulls you in, constantly tempting you to dig deeper into each corner of this haunted kingdom, peeling back layer after layer of mystery until you start wondering what's really real and what's just another web meant to keep you trapped beneath the surface. Not to say that the game deceives you or anything, because honestly this stuff is just kind of painfully obvious from the very beginning. Like, the moment you see a town full of bugs talking about ascending while everything around them is trying to kill them for shits and giggles, you already know this place has cult energy written all over it, which is why every genuinely friendly face you come across feels so refreshing, Chakra and Sherma being the obvious examples. Hearing them sing in the distance is always a welcome sight after you've probably spent the last 30 minutes gargling sewage water and dying to the same piece of shit bug 50 times over. And even those two old guys that eat cockroaches are also kinda cool, I guess. It's not a perfect kingdom, no shit, but it does feel lived in and alive in its own weird, broken way. And it's definitely far more mechanically advanced than Hollow Nest, with bug-like architecture barely even being present in the later areas, being completely replaced by metal and wood. However, to discover any of this, your mentality will absolutely be tested. After you crawl your way out of the Marrow, an area mostly littered with weak enemies and the corpses of dead pilgrims, you'll eventually stumble into Hunter's March, and wow, just wow. This section is probably the first real test you'll face in the entire game, and where it really starts expecting you to understand its mechanics. And one of the first things you'll probably notice is just how much the new movement system makes even the most basic tasks feel impossible at first. During these earlier segments, the downward strike you use to hit enemies is performed at a slight angle, meaning that whenever you try to get past these red thorn-covered flower things, you have to execute your attacks from a distance. On its own, this wouldn't be too bad, but since you're probably used to controlling a 2-foot-tall toddler with the nail in the last game, Hornet's heavier, more deliberate movement can seriously throw you off whenever you're trying to chain your jumps together. It's a small detail, but it changes everything because Hornet actually has momentum, weight, and a sense of speed that makes her feel alive. This segment was so fucking annoying. Yes, I eventually learned how to maneuver around, but once I got everything I needed from this area, I didn't even bother coming back to explore the rest until after I got the Wanderer's Crest. Am I a pussy? Probably, but man, I am not gonna keep throwing myself into these thorns while the same 3 Shallon ants chase me like I just stole their rent money. That being said, this section is still brilliantly designed. It's hard at first, yeah, but it's also where the game really teaches you what it means to be Hornet. You're not supposed to brute force your way through like the Knight, you're supposed to move with intent and to fight gracefully, and when it finally clicks, it feels amazing. Every jump, every strike, every perfectly timed rage bait becomes this satisfying little dance of survival. And the earlier mentioned ants do a great job of showing you that. The first few fights with them honestly feel like you're squaring up against some kind of semi-important side character. Each one of them moves with this weird sense of purpose. Their attacks aren't random, they're choreographed, almost like a sparring match rather than a brawl. Regardless of the damage that the haunting's done to these bugs, it's clear that there's at least some semblance of consciousness left in them. Once you inevitably crawl your way out of these first few areas, barely clinging to life and your last shred of sanity, you start realizing, oh, that's why the game was bullying me. All that earlier torture, yeah, it actually paid off. Every time you face planted into a thorn bush or got tag teamed by the local wildlife wasn't just pain, it was character development. And now, the real game can truly begin. Never have I ever been so fucking happy to see this much variety in how my opponents approach the idea of absolutely dismantling me. Whether it's the guards at the blasted steps with their ironclad defenses or those mutant cockroaches that look like SCP-682 after a meth binge, every enemy brings its own unique flavor of chaos to the table. And a lot of the time, they perfectly know how to piss you off in tandem with the environment. The layouts, the hazards, the cramped little choke points, everything syncs up with the enemy's patterns so well that it feels like the whole room is jumping you at once. At this point, you've grown so used to the punishment that you can't even complain anymore. You've evolved past the pain, you're not a victim of Farloom, you're a willing participant in its nonsense. Throughout all this chaos and bloodshed, you start to really see the beauty in this haunted world, the way every inch of Farloom feels deliberate. Everything connects so seamlessly that even when you're dying for the 47th time in the same pit of spikes, you can't help but admire how elegantly the game set you up for it. But that elegance doesn't mean mercy. Hornet herself has the durability of a roided up Goomba. It's not at all uncommon for even the most basic grunt enemies to knock off 2 entire masks with a single swing, and you don't realize how much that hurts until it happens 6 times in a row. Your moveset at the start is basically just the Knight's toolkit, but with higher standards. You can technically do everything he could, but with considerably more effort on your part, mostly due to how slow that first crest is. Your attacks feel like they drag behind you, but that's not a design flaw in any way. If you can master that beginner crest, then then every one you use afterwards is basically smooth sailing. Every upgrade you find feels earned, but you still have to fight for every scrap of mobility and power this game gives you. Every time this game throws you a bone, you take it. You take it with a smile like some kind of feral Victorian chimney child who's just grateful to not be dead yet. And then the silk abilities kick in and they're just fucking awesome, man. You got stuff like the claw line, which is basically just a linear grappling hook that feels so smooth it can be used both in combat and parkour, seamlessly chaining movement and aggression together until you start feeling like the second coming of Hanzo Hazashi, minus the fire and family trauma. Well, actually, never mind now that I think about it. Hornet's whole family is dead. Then there's the Silk Spear, which trades more of your silk for more damage so you can flex with a cool finishing move. There's a weird looking spherical thing that just detonates everything in a 5-foot radius like Hornet suddenly decided to become a living landmine. You can even pop open what's basically a pseudo-domain expansion, an area-wide silk storm that helps you deal with bosses who think that it's funny to summon half their extended family mid-fight. This much flexibility in combat really is something special, and you can pull off some absolutely insane sequences thanks to it. One of my personal favorites though has to be the cross stitch. Not only can you parry basically anything the game throws at you, but that counterattack, dude, the hitbox is massive and the vanish animation followed by those rapid elegant slashes looks so fucking cool that you'll start doing it just for the dopamine. The only real downside is the cooldown, but honestly you barely notice it during boss fights, and after that counter lands, you're already too busy trying to survive bullshit you already know the game is gonna chuck at you. Even abilities that aren't directly tied to combat, like the Cling Grip, Drifter's Cloak, and Silk Sword, give you this avalanche of simple yet stupidly fun ways to fling yourself into every hidden crevice Farloom's been smugly hiding. Now that I think about it, there's actually a lot of grave robbing in this game. It's like Team Sherry knew players would try to break the game anyways and just said, fuck it, here's a whole toolbox, go feral. And the best part is how naturally these abilities fit into the world, and nothing feels tacked on, and the addition of the different crests really adds onto the raw freedom you get in this game. These things are unique as fuck. Visually, they all look completely different, but they also affect your damage, your movement, and even how you interact with the parkour system. Some of them are even straight up game changers depending on the boss or enemy you're dealing with. It's genius, it's creative, it's complex, and I never used more than fucking 3 of these things. Look, I'm sure there are objectively better ones out there, but throughout my whole playthrough, I just stuck to the Wanderer's and Shaman's Crest.
Call me a basic bitch if you want, I genuinely don't care.
The Wanderer's Crest makes parkour 10 times easier by letting me pogo off every surface, and if that's an option, obviously I'm gonna take it. It's not flashy, but it gets the job done, and that's all I need. The Shaman's Crest, on the other hand, is so stupidly fun and over the top. It does lack slots for other things, but it also turns Hornet into Farloom's local weather hazard. Okay, yeah, it's only 3 abilities, but that's still more than one, and it kinda makes her more similar to Ghost if you think about it.
You know, Quasimodo predicted all this.
And the moment you pair it with the electric assist tool, bro, every silk ability gets coated in static, and suddenly you're out here zapping enemies with the same medical expertise NK Ultra used when they blasted their own patients with electrotherapy. Speaking of the tools, there are a ton of these things in the game. How many you can carry at once depends on the crest you're using, but you can never really get enough slots to stock every insane gadget you find, which is honestly for the best, since even one of the more flexible crests like the Architect's uses up way too many fucking shards. This system is kind of similar to the charms from the last game, but here you can't go full kitchen sink build. Every choice actually matters, so you gotta think about what you're putting on yourself instead of just slapping on 12 random upgrades and calling it a build. You can summon minions, throw javelins, set up booby traps, launch chakra circle blades, and on top of that you can coat all of them in poison, which by the way is itself a completely separate tool you can equip. Some of them bounce off each other perfectly, and thanks to this variety you can still have a pretty broken build if you just pick the right stuff, especially with how much other broken shit they added to assist you. You can throw nukes, set shit on fire, or just straight up shoot your enemies with a fucking gun. The approach to combat in this game is truly amazing, and the way each ability interacts with the world is such a nice touch. Sure, you're limited, but your creativity and resourcefulness can still more than make up for the difference. I think the 2 areas in this game that perfectly show just how insanely well the movement, exploration, and combat melt together have to be Mount Faye and Wildwater. This place is so fucking disgusting. I don't know why anyone would live here. What in the actual Starting with Mount Fei, this whole section is just pure bliss the first time you stumble into it. The main reason you're even here is to grab the wings that give you the double jump, which also means that your movement is still kind of crippled. And because of that, every jump feels tighter, harsher, and makes you feel like a 5-year-old Chinese apprentice getting whipped through your first kung fu lesson for messing up the stance again. But holy shit, it's still so fucking good. Mount Fei's freezing mechanic is genius because it forces you to think fast. You've got a limited window to jump and maneuver, so every move counts, and without a double jump, the tension is real. It turns what could be a simple platforming section into an actual challenge, because if you stay outside for more than half a second, your screen starts going blue like you're being hunted by 2 angry Italians in the Pine Barrens, and the only way to recover is by hugging whatever natural fire/light source you can find. Basically, it makes sure you don't dick around, because even when you're not dangling over a freezing death pit, the water still damages you, and those land enemies, they're like migraines with wheels on them, so you've got to be careful to not lose too much of your health before getting to the actual parkour. Even putting the mechanics aside, Mount Fei is just fucking gorgeous. The line work is incredible, and the ambience hits you in all the right ways, and every corner feels alive while still being a little threatening. Some of the nicest visuals to look at in the entire game. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum though, bile water.
Look at this shit, bro. What the fuck are they doing here? Why are their fucking bodies hanging from the ceiling?
Look, before I start ripping into this fucking monstrosity, let me just say it's put together magnificently well. The enemies, the jumps, the layout, the fucking disappearing benches, everything is crafted perfectly, like they planned every ounce of your suffering. However, if anyone from Team Cherry is watching this, yeah, congratulations. You're going straight to hell for making this. Bile water is basically like showing up to gym class and realizing everyone decided to turn dodgeball into a full contact sport. You better hope you have all the main abilities by the time you get to this place, because believe me, there is zero hand-holding. You can really tell that the team probably enjoyed working on this area a little too much, since even the enemies feel like there's some form of torture designed for fans who shat on the long development times. You have these fat floating dickheads that vomit on you whenever you retry the world's most annoying boss run back. We'll discuss those later. The tiny mosquitoes that explode after they're killed. Literal fucking mutated piranhas that jump out, bite you, and then drag you down with them into that disgusting maggot-infested water that was probably taken straight out of Asmongold's house. Oh, and don't even get me started on these things. The Sticklins. These guys will jump out at the most inconvenient times to shoot at you, then jump back into whatever disgusting hole they came from. All the while, you stand there and listen to their whispers and witness them pop out of the bushes, anticipating their next move like an American soldier during the Vietnam War listening to the trees. Combine all this with a map that has a layout straight out of a season of Ninja Warriors, and you get an area that feels like it was handcrafted specifically to break your spirit. Bile water will test you in every sadistic way imaginable, forcing you to chain together every ounce of movement tech, parkour timing, clutch combat instinct, and sheer willpower you've built up so far.
Why am I hearing a crying baby in the background? Shut up! Shut the fuck up!
The parkour itself is something that I feel like deserves special emphasis. In Hollow Knight, by the time you finally reached the big parkour sections, the game was basically over. Sure, there were a few scattered platforming bits here and there, but most of them were pretty tame. In Silksong, however, every single area has its own dedicated parkour gauntlet that actually tests you. These sections obviously make you unlock secrets like mask shards and tools, and are also integral to the overall progression, like the one at the Cogware core, which is just amazing. The zip lines whipping you around, bouncing off cogs, timing every jump perfectly, it all fits so well. But even outside of that, they're just a sick way to test just how much mastery you've built with whatever crest you're using at the moment. Even if you stick to the very first crest the game gives you, your platforming will still feel way more satisfying than if you just swapped to the Wanderers early like I did. The base crest really forces you to understand the angles of your jumps, how much height you can actually get, how far your momentum carries you, and how your slashes change your trajectory midair. Nothing crazy, but once you dial those angles in, every tight jump and narrow landing feels earned instead of automated, and the variety in each area will still give you a full-on skill check without feeling overly tedious. Yes, even there. Something that Bilewater and honestly a huge chunk of other areas absolutely nail, just like the last game, is the world building and atmosphere. No matter how much the place tries to emotionally and physically destroy you, it still pulls you in with this insane level of detail and mood. Everything feels lived in, layered, rotten, and dangerous all at once, and it truly feels like its own little ecosystem sometimes. But what makes Bilewater hit even harder is knowing it wasn't always this nightmare. Thanks to a lore tablet you can find there, you learn that this place used to have clean water and normal looking creatures, actual regular bugs just minding their business. But after the Citadel kept dumping their trash into it for ages, the whole ecosystem reshaped itself into the weird, lumpy, slightly too moist cast of characters you're dodging today. You even get a glimpse of what it used to be like in the putrefied ducts, since it's connected to Bilewater and was used to actually get the waste down there. The untouched far ends still even have that clear, clean water tying the whole area together. It makes the decay feel real, and you start to understand why the Sticklin tribe is so fucking angry all the time. Yeah, sure, the haunting technically turned them hostile, but nah, man, fuck that. Nobody should still be out here pulling Devil May Cry movement tech after being spiritually jump-scared into insanity. Every area you come across feels just as important as the last, each one sprinkled with memorable moments. Take the Deep Docks, for example, the first place you run into Lace. Up to this point, most bosses barely even acknowledge you, so having one casually talk shit before the fight already makes her stand out. The fight itself is the first genuinely great one. Sure, you can cheese it by knocking her into the lava constantly, but it's still a sick encounter nonetheless. Her moves aren't flashy, but that simplicity actually fits her character perfectly, and by the time you fight her again in the cradle, it really feels like she's been improving right alongside you. Even putting that moment aside, the whole place is absolutely dripping with lore. You eventually find out that the Deep Docks were built by the Citadel as a giant industrial grindfest to haul rare materials out of the volcanic depths. Stuff you literally can't get anywhere else, and ship it off for construction of the Citadel itself. And you know this because there's a giant fucking Citadel symbol just chilling in the background of the Lace Arena. Plus the lore tablets straight up listing which materials need to be sent. Basically, the Deep Docks are the Farloom equivalent of kids working in the Victorian coal mines. The minute details were improved upon massively from the last game, and it's why every area looks so distinct and polished. The way the Cogwar core literally makes the whole world shift and move, and the way the Deep Docks lean fully into that blacksmith aesthetic with the constant presence of molten lava that's always moving, and the metallic chambers which make you feel like you've accidentally walked straight into a giant sadistic furnace. And dude, just look at the backgrounds. Hollow Knight already had amazing parallax backgrounds, but here it's on a completely different level. Every layer moves with so much detail, it really is just amazing visual eye candy. The half-finished bridges at the Grand Gate and the sheer vastness of those weird cave-like backgrounds in the mist are some of my personal favorites. They feel massive, eerie, and almost predatory, like the world itself is watching you climb through it. Every backdrop looks carved out of madness, and every layer of scenery stacks on top of the next like a damn geological crime scene. That doesn't even make any sense. What the fuck am I talking about again?
That you're a fucking loser, maybe?
Come on, man. I'm just trying to be creative.
Creative. How about you leave the fucking house and create a job? This is why no one fucking talks to you anymore. You barely shower, you play kids games, you don't go to school, you don't work, and you don't talk to anyone.
Every enemy perfectly matches their section of the world, whether it be their design, behavior, and even just the death animation sometimes. And the general interactivity of the environment is also fantastic. You can smash or shove every single object in the rooms you wander through, and also ring every bell like a maniac. It does literally nothing, but it's so stupidly satisfying it makes my ADHD-riddled brain implode and question every life choice I've ever made for me to be entertained by stuff like this. This world is vast, huge, and colorful. Yet, it still never fails to be filled with so much dread and creepiness. Take Greymore for instance. Everything is gray and muddy. There's a literal graveyard behind you. These assholes are constantly trying to scissor you. And then you have these guys, the dreg workers, poor fucking bastards, who are stuck collecting wasted silk that falls from the Citadel like some endless sanity-rotting punishment. Honestly, that alone should have prepared us for what comes next. Once you beat Morwig, who, by the way, I beat before he got nerfed, so Yeah. You finally make your way into Belhard, and then that cutscene hits. This part shocked me so much when I first saw it. It's creepy in a way that doesn't even try too hard. It's not jump scare creepy, it's that slow sinking feeling in your ribs. Hornet walks in and everything just stops. The lighting shifts, the silhouettes twitch in the background, and the entire place feels like it's been waiting for you specifically. It really does do an amazing job at showing you what the inhabitants of this kingdom have to go through, and honestly, even better than the last game. Although, to be fair, most of the inhabitants in the last game were dead. But hey, at least here, unlike the capital in Hollow Knight where you were surrounded by generic mindless servants, you get the premium edition of blind worship through the Citadel. This place is genuinely stunning, man. From the first cutscene, you're immediately hit with this massive sense of scale and mystery. Visually, it's nothing like the areas before it, all thanks to those gold-plated materials covering everything. And that majestic music in the choral chambers with flutes and clarinets makes the whole place feel like a holy shrine, but also weirdly superficial at the same time. It's really easy to forget what's actually underneath all this glitz and glamour. The Underworks, a filthy, grinding mechanical pit that only functions because of the pilgrims who were promised that if they worked hard enough, they'd earn a place above. But thanks to Loam, a bug who's been stuck down here seemingly since childhood, you quickly learn that that's complete bullshit. Even getting a single rosary down here is basically impossible, which is why the enemies barely drop any. Meanwhile, the bugs in the coral chambers are showering you in loot like they've never heard of financial struggle. It's the difference between working on a 1910s banana plantation and being the guy who gets paid just to guard the fruit at the market. Even their clothes look greasy, fully showing just how brutal this industrial hellhole is. And even just sitting down turns into its own punishment. You get up from the bench and boom, locked. No warning, no mercy, just click and you're instantly bleeding more of the tiny handful of rosaries you've managed to scrape together. It feels less like a rest point and more like the Citadel charging you a fucking breeding tax. All this isn't to say that the place above is some utopia either. The bugs in the Citadel are just a bunch of masked pilgrims wandering around aimlessly and singing, and the few sane ones trapped inside are completely overwhelmed by how consuming and oppressive the whole place feels. It's got this uncanny mix of luxury and misery that makes you feel like you've accidentally wandered into a billionaire's mansion that's also a hospital, a church, a prison, and an IKEA showroom. You could be walking through these grand gold halls and your brain immediately just goes, wow, this is beautiful. And then the next corridor hits you with medical nightmares and a spa for people who definitely did not survive the spa treatment. Even if you're faithful, you still risk being thrown into the White Ward, another lovely subsection where pilgrims are experimented on, tortured, and then tossed aside like they're garbage. They even have fucking cremation chambers in there just in case the Citadel needs to speedrun someone's ascension with a built-in industrial air fryer. As you make your way through the White Ward, you eventually start to piece together the horrors yourself. The messed up pilgrims, the silk experiments, the way life is twisted into fuel, it becomes obvious that this place is somehow connected to Grandmother Silk and the Haunting. You eventually find out that both the White Ward and the Citadel were originally slapped together by the Weavers, the same guys Hornet's connected to through Hera, and they're also the same group of people Grandmother Silk helped create by injecting tiny spiders with her own DNA, which we can find out through the whole first Sinner boss fight, which is located in an entirely separate area. The whole Citadel wasn't just some holy palace, it was a glorified life support system keeping Grandmother Silk knocked out, while the Weavers kept leeching off her silk in the White Ward to extend their own lives. But because they were pumping her silk through literally everything, walls, machinery, the damn air vents, it ended up leaking into the air itself. So even while she was basically in a coma, drooling into a pillow somewhere above Farloom, she could still influence the world. And that's how you get an entire kingdom slowly turning into her brainwashed fan club. The silk and song from these bugs are the only things that matter here. Wait a minute. This is pure genius in map design, and the lore being slowly drip-fed through throughout your playthrough just hits different. Every corner, every hallway makes sense in the world, and finding little details that explain why everything is the way it is, it actually makes exploring feel rewarding instead of just filler. This whole place is basically just a factory for Grandmother Silk's madness, and it's during parts like these that I'm genuinely glad we're finally playing as someone like Hornet, an actual character with a brain, opinions, and enough dialogue to remind you she isn't just another mute little cockroach with a stick. We still like ghosts though, you know. That's my baby. She comments on the pilgrims, she reacts to what she sees, and you get these tiny glimpses into who she actually is. You'll learn she likes fluffy things, hates being touched, and also apparently fucks. And that red memory stage with her where you finally get a front row seat to why she's actually like this is just incredible. It hits you all at once, the pressure, the expectations, the way she was molded into something sharp and lonely, and yet despite all that, she's still completely capable of feeling pity and responsibility for the people she meets along the way. She's blunt, yeah, but she's not hollow. She'll size someone up, judge them on the spot, but if they earn it even just a little, she'll show respect. Garmin, chakra, the fucking dog thing you abuse sometimes, characters like that actually get through to her. And dude, that fight with Garmin in Act 3 after the voids twisted him hits hard. And those final lines plus Zaza's needle and dialogue after he goes down are genuinely heartbreaking. Speaking of bosses,
Why the fuck is this thing giving birth?
no matter the difficulty, the majority of bosses here are just amazing. They're pure artisanal violence crafted by people who very clearly hate us, but in the most respectful way possible. The rhythm and flow from the last game didn't just return, it got injected with Tren, Anavar, and had its tendons replaced with steel cables right before getting shipped off to train in the mountains of Dagestan until it came back sounding like it wakes up doing weighted chin-ups on a cliffside. It's just this relentless dance of dodging, slashing, parrying, panicking, coping, seething, and then somehow winning by the skin of your last mask. The game has so many great boss fights that I don't even know how to start this part. How about Carmelita, one of the final bosses of Act 3 and easily one of the saddest. When you finally find her, she isn't some mighty queen, she's a husk. A burned out shell who spent everything she had trying to keep her people, those ants from earlier, safe from the haunting unleashed by Grandmother Silk. All that sacrifice, all that effort, and she still lost them. What makes it worse is that you can actually find a statue of her super early in the game, and there's a pretty big fucking difference.
Love to eat, brother.
Eventually, you'll enter her memory, carve your way through that gauntlet of loyal soldiers, and you'll be finally met with her. Once the fight starts, the flow clicks instantly. Carmelita is fast, ridiculously fast, but her moves are very clearly telegraphed. It's one of those fights where you always know what killed you. Additionally as well, her attacks are actually pretty easy to dodge, but only if you're rocking that fast slashing Wanderer's crest I mentioned earlier. Without it, yeah, the speed ramps up real quick, and this becomes one of those rare fights that basically forces you to reconsider your entire identity as a player. And even if you do have that specific crest on you, her health pool is monstrous. Easily one of the largest in the entire game, which causes the fight to drag on. Your hands get sweaty, your patience cracks, and you start getting that anxious feeling of
Stop! Please just fucking die already! Come on, no!
the speed of that forward dash she does with spikes blooming behind her turns healing into a complete gamble if you're anywhere near the ground. And those jumps she throws out, they completely ruin any hope of safely pogoing. She'll do a giant hop at the moment you commit, making you whiff the hit and drop straight into danger. It's just enough elevation to break your flow and make you second guess every attempt. Even those shuriken looking things she tosses around can turn a simple moment into pure agony, especially once she upgrades from throwing 2 to 4 at a time. This fight is all about patience. Don't think of it as just a battle, embrace the flow. Because once you sync up with her timing and get into the zone, it stops feeling like a trial and starts feeling more like a dance. It's even better knowing that her boss theme is just her singing one last time for her people. A final moment of beauty before everything ends, and when that clicks, it easily becomes one of the most satisfying experiences in the entire game. Grohl the Great.
What the fuck even are you? Please stop fucking touching me. I'm begging. What is that? What even fucking is that?
Everything about this guy sucks. He's ugly as hell for one.
He's just like a hooker.
And of course, his fight takes place in fucking bile water. Every time you fall in the water here, your silk pool gets chipped away and you're forced to heal just to get the parasites off you without actually restoring any real health. Which, as you can imagine, the second you make it a part of the boss room, it instantly makes the fight 5 times harder. And this is without even getting into any of his actual moves. He constantly spits out that weird exploding snot like he's been storing nasal napalm in his skull since 2003 and finally decided today's the day to share it. And because he's built like a rejected Cacao demon from Doom, you can't just zip to the other side of the room whenever you want. You either risk getting body checked by this walking sinus infection or you panic dive straight into the maggot infested fucking bile water. And even when he finally ducks back under the sludge to give you a breather, you're not actually safe. You still have to dodge that spike stick booby trap swinging towards you like Kevin McAllister set it up. and deal with whatever minions he summons to jump you. Basically, yeah, he's slow, but you're fighting him and OSHA violating environmental hazards at the same time. And don't even get me started on the second half of this boss fight, man. When you're not trying to avoid getting vacuum cleaned into his stomach, you also have to deal with him whipping out the vengeful spirit. Yeah, ghost spell from the last game. Why does he have it? How does he have it? Well, you actually find out later that he ate a snail shaman because he was still pretty pissed at the Citadel for ruining his home. He only fires it out like 3 times, sure, but because you don't have much room to work with and the way he's floating around, the trajectory is always just random enough to smack you in the face. This boss fight is just pure chaos, man. It feels like Team Cherry is a cat that kicked the door open at 3 AM and brought home a dead squirrel. It wasn't at all uncommon in Hollow Knight to be a little sad when beating a boss due to their backstory.
Oh man.
But in Silksong, the boss fights in this game are still spectacular for the most part. Those 7 years really gave Team Cherry room to cook up some insane designs, mechanics, and lore for each of them. Like this guy right here, banished to Sinner's Road for committing several culinary crimes, and somehow decides your face is the perfect chair. No, seriously, he literally sits on your face. Then there's that bug in the slab who gives birth mid-fight and sends her kids after you. Seriously, what is it with this game and getting jumped constantly? And as far as the easier boss fights go, they're a spectacle in their own right. Take the 4th chorus, for example. Its design is absolutely insane. It's just a massive steampunk robotic bug that looks like it crawled its way out of some sci-fi fever dream. And the way it moves is perfectly mechanical too. Even when it's swatting at you or smashing platforms so you're more likely to fall into the lava, it somehow keeps this rigid robotic vibe. And the death animation it has is probably my favorite in the entire game. Honestly, besides Grohl, there aren't that many bosses that stand out as being particularly annoying or unfair.
He's the devil. Yeah, he is. He's smarter than you. He's luckier than you. Whatever he's supposed to happen, I'm telling you, the exact reverse opposite of that is gonna happen, okay?
During development, Team Cherry had to team up with the Church of Satan and the Cult of Cthulhu to create this sick test just to see how far the human mind could be pushed before it completely snaps. Its design straight up mocks you, the simplicity, the soulless eyes, like it knows exactly how much it can mess with your head. You fight this asshole early on, so that means you have no dash ability to easily dodge his downward slam. Every time he comes crashing down, it feels like the Blitz in London, slow, looming, and you see it coming, but half the time you're still in the wrong place when it lands. And once this fucking monstrosity starts calling in its minions, yeah, you're cooked. But who cares, right? At least you don't have to fight it twice. Okay, I need to calm the fuck down. There's a gay butterfly in this game. He just kind of floats there like a drunk circus performer, and then he starts bombing you with glitter. Cool fight, I guess. Oh yeah, the first sinner. A lot of Silksong admittedly does flirt with being unfair sometimes. Checkpoints can feel way too spaced out. Some areas look like Team Cherry just spun a wheel labeled random bullshit and filled the room based on wherever it landed. And yeah, that even bleeds into a few of the boss fights here and there. But this fight is not one of those cases. It's one of the most aggressive back and forths in the whole game, and it's also stupidly intentional. Every single move in her kit exists purely to ruin your day. The rapid fire needle jabs, the wild claw swipes where she just commits to shredding you, and the earlier mentioned domain expansion move that turns half the arena into a blender. Additionally, she's constantly adjusting her spacing so you're never comfortable, and yet her entire fight flows perfectly, even if it is disruptive at first. The patterns bleed into each other, you dodge one string, land maybe a single jab on her, and boom, she's already snapping into the next combo. It's overwhelming, but in a good way, and then out of nowhere, she leans forward, Silk starts glowing, and
Is this bitch fucking healing?
as far as the bosses overall go, even the ones I didn't love all the way through still had at least one really cool idea going for them outside of just, yeah, the design is sick or the music goes hard. Some mess with your movement in clever ways or are just carried by one specific moment that sticks in your head. Now, while I do believe the boss fights themselves are genuinely awesome on average, there's unfortunately one thing that completely muddies them sometimes. The runbacks. These just straight up suck. Spending half your time trudging across the map back just to retry, that's not fun. Some people try to call this artificial difficulty, but the thing is, it's not even difficult, it's just extremely fucking tedious. This could have easily been avoided or at least toned down in certain spots. Take the Gruul run back in Bilewater for instance, where there's almost no checkpoints and the only nearby bench basically makes you lose a chunk of your health and silk before the fight even begins. But hey, at least they added gambling. The progression in Silksong, much like in Hollow Knight, is still very open. There is an expected path, don't get me wrong, but it's never one you're straight up forced into. This is awesome because it gives players freedom while also deepening that world building I mentioned earlier, all the while still feeling organic and thought out. For example, you generally enter the Citadel through the Last Judge, but there's also an arguably better alternative route. If you make your way through the Mist area and into the Exhaust Organ, you'll stumble upon a structure housing a boss, Phantom, who looks and moves oddly similar to Lace, and the fight itself is great. You're immediately hit with this crazy good Dracula-esque music. The combat isn't overly intense but still fun. However, Phantom moves like she's running at a fraction of her full potential, and once you beat her, you gain a second entry point to the Citadel. Stick around a bit, however, and with your needle in, you'll uncover the truth. Phantom and Lace are twins, and the reason Phantom performs so poorly is because the silk grandmother Silk used to create her is fading, even to the point where you can actually see her mask starting to fall off mid-combat. She attacks you not out of malice, but because she'd rather die in battle than sit alone in the Exhaust Organ and slowly wither away. On a slightly happier note when it comes to the progression, if you manage to collect a ton of fleas early on, the flea caravan will straight up help you skip Morwood. Yeah, it's very anticlimactic, and honestly, combined with the fact that Garmin and Zaza can assist you with this boss, I'm convinced that Team Cherry was second guessing their own game design with some of these fights. Speaking of the flea caravan, these little assholes made me pay for their soup every single time I wanted a refill, and I'm out here literally saving their children. Doesn't even have anything to do with the progression, I just had to mention it. The fleas themselves are way better than the grubs from the last game, way more variety in design, and some of them even have actual dialogue, and you can play with them later, unlike the last game where all your favorite collectibles got turned into inflation fetish art. The incentive to go out and explore is just as present in this game as it was in the last one, if not more so. These little fuckers can be found in the oddest areas, and given just how big the world really is, you'll indirectly come across other shit thanks to this. And even if you do just aimlessly wander around without caring much about the fleas and their whereabouts, you're still bound to stumble across at least a few of the several different residential areas this game has. Bone Bottom, Bellheart, Songclave, they all have different NPCs, items to buy, and even architecture, and they all also contain notice boards containing wishes on them, which are basically this game's equivalent to Witcher contracts, or any kind of side quest actually. I'm a little slow, I just realized that. A lot of them are pretty mundane. The bosses they normally make you go after aren't all that complex. However, they're a nice way to make good money without having to do those god-awful package delivery missions. Some of them, though, are legit great expansions to the main story, like when you help Chakra track down her master, only to find out, yeah, no, it fucking dead the whole time. Or when Sherma wanders off to Whiteward to get supplies, and you get that quest where you're running around like a panicked parent in a supermarket because the little idiot disappeared again. My personal favorite one, though, has to be the final audience wish you get from the second Sentinel. During Act 2, you constantly see this thing awkwardly shuffle around the Citadel. After you're done following its trail, you're led into a room surrounded with 4 other similarly looking automatons, and you're told your strength needs to be tested. The fight is good, no shit, but the detail that really makes it peak is the fact that those X-shaped strikes the second Sentinel uses, they're the exact same technique the Pinterest knows. It suddenly clicks. Her whole species was probably driven out because these abominations were created to replace them. I'm so fucking fat, bro. It ties together 2 completely different characters you never expect to be connected, and it hits you like the lore equivalent of a senior citizen getting folded by Jake Paul. And let's say you eventually finish every wish board, collect every flea, and buy an overpriced house for Hornet like the true baby boomer she is, then go around scooping up the 3 different souls left by several snail shamans who absolutely did not die of natural causes. Only after all that nonsense do you finally earn the right to wrap up this fucking infuriating game. The final boss of Act 2, Grandmother Silk, is honestly really easy. Like, after getting throated by a giant magic fly and surviving those jumping bush goblins in vile water, nothing this game throws at you can actually scare you anymore.
You fucking suck.
I'd even argue that your second face-off with Lace is far more intense and carries way more weight in terms of story impact. She confronts you with a single terrifying purpose. She believes that Grandmother Silk values Hornet far more than her because, much like Phantom, Lace's existence is fragile and fading, to the point where she barely even considers herself truly alive. And yet, despite that, she still craves the acknowledgement of her mother. She fights not out of hatred, not out of spite, but to prove, maybe just to herself, that she isn't as weak as she's been led to believe. Only after you land the final blow do you begin to piece together the larger picture. The cradle was never just a battleground. After exploring it for a bit, you realize that this is a prison, designed to contain the Weavers that had escaped from Farloom, of which Hornet is a direct descendant of through Hera the Beast. The story hits you with the full scale of what's been happening behind the scenes, leaving you awed at just how deep Grandmother Silk's manipulation runs. This presentation is perfect. She fully commits to the ancient Eldritch Grandma pulling the strings of an entire kingdom vibe. Those floating pins orbiting her like she's some cosmic sewing machine from hell really sell the feeling of superiority. So when she finally swings her own hand at you or launches those spider webs that deal 3 masks of damage, it catches you completely off guard while you're still dealing with the pins. It's a sick way of mixing up the pressure without ruining the flow, and then that second wave hits, and you can tell she's starting to get pissed. The ceiling starts falling apart, her attacks speed up, and she corners you harder with those spikes and webs like she's trying to ground you and send you to your room permanently. And the best part, you don't have to feel bad for this bitch at all. Unlike the Hollow Knight from the last game, she's not a tragic victim. She's a manipulative, twisted despot with no redeeming qualities. And she's the reason bile water exists. So thank you, and fuck up. Yeah, so apparently she did actually love at least one of her kids, since she keeps Lace alive while they're falling into the void. Lace literally saves your life just to spite her, and now everything's gone to shit anyway. Lace is pissed, the whole world's drowning in void juice, every boss you skipped because I'll come back later is now juiced out of their mind, and the gay man in Bellheart is clinically depressed. So now it's your job to fix everything, because someone had the galaxy brain idea to finally show affection to their weird pet project child at the last second. And yeah, this all sounds suspiciously familiar. To be fair, at least you didn't have to pay for benches in Hollowness that much. And they did have an actual sewage system. Maybe the Pill King wasn't that bad. Ignoring the whole mass child genocide thing. The presence of the void in Act 3 really is a total game changer. Certain bugs are now harder to kill, making even previously manageable enemies into absolute nightmares. You have to navigate more gauntlets across the world, and the environment itself is actively hostile. Corpses are tied together and shoot gunk at you, and the general tone of the world is even more haunting, with shadows twisting unnaturally and background details constantly reminding you that this kingdom is rotting from the inside out. Still, it's not all misery. Honestly, it's still slightly better than Hollowness. The last shrine is up and running and now has a 5-year-old as its leader. Bone Bottom and Pilgrim's Rest are destroyed. Actually, you know what, never mind, let's move on. Anyways, you have to take out 3 more bosses, have that worker fix an ancient elevator, make Hornet relive her childhood trauma so that she could get that flower you probably gave Zelderbug during the last game, and then finally we can start the final boss, Lost Lace. The music is outstanding, building perfectly on her original theme while adding this heavier, more haunting layer that immediately tells you this fight means business. And the arena is huge, giving you room to experiment, but Lace is never far behind. Her old thrusting, slashing, and spinning moves all return, now buffed by the Void's influence, except now she has tendrils that form behind her when she dashes forwards, so you can't just sneak behind her for free hits anymore. And then there are the giant tentacles with ridiculous reach that keep you on your toes at all times. You can still damage her, but one misstep and the fight completely shifts. The tendrils can also rise up from the ground, so if you ever get too comfortable in that spacious arena feeling, you'll be smashed right back into reality when one of them pops up for a second or two while Lace is still swinging at you. On top of all that, those black orb things that spit out gunk above you force you instantly into the defensive, and once the second phase kicks in, that's when this boss fight truly shines. The speed ramps up just enough, and the addition of massive waves of slowly creeping, spinning spikes reminds you to stay sharp and never let your guard down. Each Each attack she throws flows seamlessly into the next, leaving no moment to breathe, and the sense of spaciousness evaporates entirely when she starts forming her cross-stitch orbs. Your creativity, reflexes, and reaction time get tested just enough here, and by the end you feel completely satisfied. After you beat her and pick her up, Hornet launches herself out of the void, which then closes around her. And then what could have been another somber ending about a kingdom nearly lost to its ruler's greed only to be saved by an unlikely hero's sacrifice quickly gets flipped on its head. This sequel is truly amazing. It gives characters from the previous game meaningful closure, answers the lingering question of whether a vessel could ever be truly hollow, and delivers a much needed happy ending. This game has issues, don't get me wrong. I still think its replayability isn't nearly as strong as the last game's, mostly because of just how much random bullshit gets thrown at you sometimes, especially when you look at just how much you're forced to do just to unlock Act 3. But the positives still outweigh the negatives, and even if there are more flaws than last time, there are also way more highs to go with them. From gameplay to world building, environmental storytelling, and atmosphere, Silksong is, to me, nearly perfect across the board. I've already sunk over 100 hours into this masterpiece, and with so much side content still untouched, plus promised future DLC, I'm more than ready to dive in for 100 hours more.